hosting a karaoke party in a couple weeks, and as a programmer, I feel like I should build something to help facilitate that party. I've really been enjoying Deno lately, and I thought today might be a fun time to explore the Fresh framework and do a little tutorial of building a interface that lets people submit songs and an admin interface that helps me manage that queue. And then we're also going to deploy it to my Raspberry Pi, so it'll be accessible to everyone on my Wi-Fi network, which seems like a fun little adventure. So we're using Deno, so let's put on our JavaScript hat. But we're actually going to be using TypeScript. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I have a projects directory that I'm working out of. I've got Z shell up here. I'm going to go ahead and run deno run-a-r fresh.deno.dev. What this is going to do, it's going to get the Fresh installer. So we can go ahead, it's just kind of like create React app, I guess would be a good way to put it. And you know what? If you're unfamiliar with Fresh, maybe we should talk about it for a moment. So Fresh is a simple, approachable, productive web framework. That's what it says here. To me, what Fresh is a server-side rendering for Preact specifically made for Deno. And I'll be honest, I don't plan on using a ton of Deno-specific constructs for this outside of Fresh itself, so this will be kind of interesting. But you can see here, you have JSX or TSX. This is Preact. You can see here it mentions Preact, so there's zero JavaScript shipped to the browser by default. It uses islands. One thing that I was a little nervous about was the island-based architecture. I haven't done anything with that yet, and truth be told, I am maybe not convinced it's my favorite thing. I think building this in SvelteKit probably would be quicker for me and more comfortable. But we're going to try this because trying new things is how we grow. So you can interact with it here. You can see there's a counter. Cool. It works like you would expect it to. This is nice. Forms the right way. This is very similar to SvelteKit, which makes me pretty happy. But we're actually posting form data, and it does things like set the location back to thanks, returns response. So that means whenever you hit something like this and hit submit, it will take you to a new page, just like forms are intended to work. Which also means this works without JavaScript on the client, which is always nice. I don't know how realistic that is anymore, but if you do find yourself in a scenario where JavaScript is disabled for whatever reason, your Fresh site will still work. Most of the way. Whatever you do on your islands won't, I guess, but like forms and things of that nature, when done properly, should still work. Okay, we could talk about Fresh for a while, but I think it'd be more fun to just build something. So let's get into it. We're going to call this Karaoke App. Do you want to use a styling library? Yeah, why not? Tailwind. Okay. Do you use VS Code? We'll go ahead and say yes. I might use Vim for this. I might do VS Code. I know that some people have left comments saying that Vim is hard to follow and VS Code is easier to follow, so we shall see. So I can get into my folder that I created called Karaoke App, and now I can run deno task start. While this runs, it's going to, wow, that was quick, build everything it needs, and then if we open up localhost, you can see, hey, this looks familiar. I'm not going to go crazy with the styling here, so we'll probably keep the same styling. We probably will make the screen full page, but this is not a tutorial on styling a website, so we'll probably leave this very similar to what you see here, but we'll add a couple components as well. So getting started with that, one of the first things I want to do is mention that deno-fresh has HMR, it might be a Flutter term, hot module reloading, but the idea here is live updates. So if I were to go into projects, karaoke app, come here and then make a change. So if I go to routes index and make a change here and go to line 17, updating this message. Let's change the word message to blurb, refresh, and now you can see it updated to blurb. We don't have to restart the server, nothing like that. That's all taken care of outside of the box with Deno, which is really, really nice. You'll also notice that this is all TypeScript out of the box. So if we look at this, we have main TS, dev TS, fresh config TS. It's all TypeScript. We don't have to install the TypeScript compiler. Deno ships with one. We don't have to install a formatter. We don't have to install linter. Deno ships with it all, which is so nice. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and make a couple items. We're going to touch routes. We want to add admin.tsx. We're going to add an admin interface, and then we'll just keep the main interface that we have here on the root of the URL. What else do we need? We're going to add an API route. So we'll talk about API routes in just a second. But we want to add one. We're going to call it submissions.tsx. Submissions.ts. Sure, yeah, should be good. What else do we need? We're going to create an island for a song submission. So islands are the interactive client-side JavaScript that we have. So let's just touch it for now. Islands. So it ships with a counter. We can remove that, which I will do in just a second. But let's go ahead and add song submission.tsx. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove the counter. Okay. That means our application should break. So if we look at what we're running here, you can see, hey, it can't import this fresh gen TS, specifically because module not found, island counter. We just removed that. Totally makes sense. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to go into our application and remove references to it. I'm going to try to do this in Vim. We'll see if I find that I'm moving around a little too much or doing anything that might be hard to follow. I will probably swap to VS Code, but for now, let's use Vim. So if we go into our routes, actually, before we do this, let's talk about how this is structured. So if we ls, we can see a couple different things. We have static, we have components. Might be good to actually take a look at what's inside of components. So you can see there's a button. I actually don't think we're going to need that, so I'm going to go ahead and remove components. We'll keep it simple. We have islands. So we have our song submission file that we have just created. And then we have routes. You can see we have a 404, an app TSX, an admin TSX that we just created, and an index TSX. We have a route called /greet. I'm going to go ahead and remove that because we don't need it. So we can remove those. And then we have our API routes. So if we ls routes API, you can see, we have submissions, and then we also have jokes. We don't need the joke route, so we're going to remove the joke route. Great. So with that in mind, now we can actually get into our project. So I'm going to go open up routes. No, sorry. Let's make one more thing. We're essentially taking in a queue, right? So we have a queue of submissions, and then I need to be able to manage that queue on the admin side. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new directory called submissions. And then I'm going to vim into submissions, submissions.ts. We're going to do a couple different things here. So first thing, export interface submission. Let's define what a submission looks like. We have a name, it's a string. We have a song, which is also a string. Okay. We are going to create a class to wrap this all up called submission queue. And in this class, we're going to have submissions, which is going to be an array of submission. We'll go ahead and initialize that to an empty array. And then I think because of the way this is working, there's potentially a chance that someone is adding an item to the submissions list, and we are mutating the submissions list at the same time. So I think we're going to want a mutex. So I'm going to create a mutex and call it new mutex. We need to import a mutex. So we do have one available. We can go import mutex from https://deno.land x/async at 2.1.0/mod.ts uncached. Okay, uncached or missing remote. I will deal with that in just a second. But it looks like at least the type is valid now. So we need to add some methods to our submission queue. So we can do an async add submission, and we're going to take in a submission, which is of type submission. Pretty straightforward. So with the mutex, the way this works is we will acquire a mutex, do our changes, and then we will release the mutex. Acquiring the mutex is a promise. And then I will do this dot submissions dot push, and we will push the submission onto, we will push the submission onto the submission array. And then we will say this dot mutex dot release, and we will release the mutex. We are also going to want to pop a submission. Actually, maybe popping isn't appropriate because we could run into the scenario where someone here is, maybe they have a song, they're next in the queue, maybe they're in the bathroom, and we don't want to skip them forever, but we might want to move that submission. And if we take that approach, also it might be beneficial to remove submissions that aren't at the front of the queue. So maybe a queue is not the appropriate term for this anymore, but we'll keep it with what we have. So we are going to write a method called move submission. And what move submission is going to get is an index. The index is going to be a number, so that'll be the submission we want to move. It'll get a direction. We will say that direction is either up or down. And I think that's all we should need parameter-wise for this one. So with this in mind, we have a similar scenario. We always want to start by getting our mutex, and then we want to make sure that we release it too. So we will do that in just a moment. We need to determine if we're swapping this with the previous or the next item. So we can do a little bit of really basic directional math here. If we say direction is equal to down, index +1, else index -1. And that should move, that should give us the next index to swap with. That should move things in the direction that we would expect. Let's do some bounds checking here because we're defensive programmers. So we want to make sure that our index is greater than or equal to 0. And this dot submissions dot length index is less than this dot submissions dot length. But we also need to do that with the swap too. So we'll add another set of parens here. Throw in our and. I'm going to let Dino format this for me, hopefully in just a moment. But we basically want to check the same thing. We want to make sure that we're swapping to a valid spot. And then we also want to make sure that our swap index is, yet again, valid on the other end. Okay, that should be good. We can come down here. Format. Hey, it did. Excellent. And that's pretty sure that's the Dino formatter just running on save with the Dino language server, which is really nice. Okay, we can create a temp variable. We can say this dot submissions index. Then we can say this dot submissions index is equal to this dot submissions swap index. And then we want to swap our temp variable back into the swap index. The temp like so. And then can't stress enough, super important, don't forget to release your mutex. Okay, so that handles adding submissions and moving submissions, but we need to be able to remove them too, right? So we have, I think, one more method, which is simply going to be remove. If we add remove submission, excuse me, and we do an index, and we have a number, that's what our index is of type number. We need to grab the mutex, acquire, type check because we're defensive programmers. So we check our index again, and we check that the index is less than this dot submissions dot length. That way we're not trying to remove something that does not exist in the array. And then we should just be able to handle this via a nice submissions splice. We take the index, we remove one item, and again, do not forget, release your mutex. Okay, cool. One last thing that we need to do in this this file here is export const. I'm just going to create a global submission queue, which is a new instance of the submission queue, and we'll just hook into that. And obviously, if you have followed along to this point, you've realized that we're not storing this in a database. We're storing this in memory. So if our server gets restarted for whatever reason, we will lose the data that we have in memory. For my one-night karaoke event, that seems fine. It seems simple. I actually had originally planned to use deno deno key value, deno kv. Let me just mention this. Is there really not a link? Okay, I thought that would be a little easier to see. Okay, yeah, so Deno has this Deno KV that's unstable and subject to change and removal at any time, which I was unaware of. But the idea here is that it's a really straightforward key value store, and it works with running Deno apps locally. It works with Deno deploy, and then it also apparently works with deploying Deno on your own, but it's a little more complicated, and I didn't really want to mess with that just for the sake of a fresh tutorial. So maybe I'll do another tutorial where we retrofit Deno key value database onto this. But again, if you, this is really cool. If you choose to use Deno deploy, it just works. It works with zero configuration on Deno deploy. Unfortunately, I'm deploying on my Raspberry Pi, which is not Deno deploy. So it's not going to just work. I'd have to wire the two together and figure out a solution because it is pretty adaptable. So I think it uses SQLite under the hood if you're running locally, and then if you're running on like Deno deploy, I don't actually know what it is. My hunch is it's probably like Redis or something, but I could be wrong. Anyways, had an interest in doing that, but we're going to keep everything in memory for now. So with that in mind, we have our submissions module. We can go ahead and go to our index. So if we go to routes index tsx, this is the okay. There's quite a bit going on here. So we're going to start by changing this function. We don't need a lot. So we don't need use signals. This doesn't exist anymore, so we're going to remove that. We will go to 15. Remove the counter there. Okay, cool. So we will keep some of this. We will go ahead and add here. We're going to add some Tailwind. I don't have Tailwind memorized, so I think that is correct. We may end up bouncing back and forth on the Tailwind piece quite a bit. So I'm going to change this to something that says like, let's karaoke. That sounds fun. And then I guess the next question is, do we need this paragraph? I don't think we do. So let's go ahead and remove the paragraph. We'll come back here. We're going to add a form because forms seem like the right way to handle data submission. So if we have a form, we obviously are going to want some labels. So we have a block. I'm going to add a margin bottom on this bad boy. We'll come in here again. I'm going to say name. We'll add an input. Class equals block. E2. Type equals text. Name is equal to name. Value, yeah, we'll keep it empty. And then just a small call out. I don't know if you know this, but if you use labels and you don't have the input inside of the label, you have to use the label for and then attach that to the input via the name or ID. I don't remember which, actually, mainly because I don't do that very often anymore. Instead, if you just put the input inside the label, it connects the two automatically for you, which is really, really nice. So let's add another label. This label is going to be song and artist. Okay. And in here, we will add input class equals block p2 text message from the dog's vet. Type text name is, we'll just go with song for this one. Empty value. I did notice that I didn't add a class on this label. We want those to be block and margin bottom 4. In our form, we want to add a button. We want to add a type, which, sorry. Let's go ahead and put the text. Say submit. We'll come up here. We'll add a type, which is type submit. We'll add a class. That class is going to be, let's do background rows 400 with full padding 4 rounded medium, I think. Text white. Try that. Okay, cool. So in theory, are we able to run our Deno app yet? I'm just going to start this again from scratch. Seems promising. Yeah, okay, cool. This actually looks great. I'm happy with how this looks. Great. So now that we've done that, we need to handle these, right? So like we can hit submit and holy cow, nothing happens. So we should fix that. So what we're going to do is we will go back to our route file. And what we can do at the beginning of these files is actually, I guess anywhere really, but the beginning makes the most sense to me. We can add handlers. So I'm going to import handlers from $fresh server.ts. And then I'm also going to go ahead and import our submission queue that we just created from submission.ts. Should be correct. Okay, we're getting yelled at because those aren't used. We're going to fix that right now. So if we export const and we have a handler and we say this is of type handlers, so you have a couple options here. You can do a function handler here that handles every type of HTTP method. Or if you do an object like we're going to do, what we can do is we can set properties on here. So like an async get, we get a request and we get a context. Now if we come in here, we can say const params equals new URL, request.url, dot search params, and maybe I should explain what I'm doing here. I want to be able to add a message. So when you submit your song, I just want to let you know you're good. Like I've got your song, I've got your name, you're good to go. So this is a concept known as a flash message. So I'm going to build a little flash message solution here in Deno. We have our search params, and then all I really want to do is await ctx.render message params get flash. And I know we don't have our form submissions set up yet, but we'll go ahead and go back to our JSX down here. And let's put this before let's karaoke. So we're now getting some properties. So we want to say something like data.message. And if data.message is true, then maybe we want something like p class P4, MB4, background rows 400, text white, maybe. And then maybe we'll just say data.message. We're going to get yelled at because these types don't exist yet because our home function here does not know about them. So let's fix that. So if we add something like this, we say we want to destructure data, and we know that the object we're getting has an object called data, and it's got something called a message, and that message is of type string. We should be good with our functions. And we don't submit our form yet, or we don't have form submission yet. So what we can do is instead, we can say flash yo, and in theory, if I was running the server still, oh, I am. We have an error. Denoland async mod. Error sending request. Okay, I see what the issue is. We have two typos, so let's go ahead and fix those. So if we come back to our file here, this should be deno.land. And then after the @ sign here, this needs to be v2.1.0. We can double check that by looking at the URL here, and that was just my mistake. So with that in mind, hey, look, our server appears to be running as we would expect. So if we go back here, we have this. Let's try the flash message. So if we say flash yo, there it is. Perfect. Okay, cool. That is exactly what we want to see. Let's get back to our form submission, though, because that's going to be probably one of the most interesting pieces of this. So if we go back to our route file and we go back to our index.ts, what we want to do is we're going to create a new handler here. So this one's going to handle a post request. So we do a request. We technically get a context, but I don't think we need it, so I'm going to preface it with an underscore for now. We have a form that we're wanting to get, so we have request.form data. We want to get like a name, so we do form.get name, and then that's possibly nullable, so let's convert it to a string. Sorry, the value could be anything because it's coming from a form, but it also could be nullable because it may not exist. In our case, if it's not null, we want to string it. And then we'll do the same thing with song. So we have song equals form.get song, and then we come here and we toString it. Now that we have this, let's just do a little bit of checking. Make sure that you submit both of these. So if you don't submit name or you don't submit a song, we're going to return a new response. Not what I wanted. So again, return new response. Much better. The body can be null, and then we can return something like status 400 in this case. Our compiler is yelling at us because we're not returning a response in both paths, so we will go ahead and take care of that as well. But if we have these values, we want to add them to the submission queue. So we'll take submission queue, add submission, and then we need to add something like name and song. Okay, pretty good. We're going to set some headers. So we'll say new headers, const message, and then we'll do some string interpolation here. All right, name. You're signed up to sing song. We can do some header setting. So we'll do headers.set. We'll take the location, and we will set the location to // you know what? Let's do more string interpolation here. / flash equals encode URI component, and we'll do message. How about that? I think that should be good, but now we need to return a new response. So we return new response. The body will be null. The status in this case will be something like, oh my gosh, 203 is accepted. HTTP accepted status. Always forget. 203, 202. Okay, we'll do a 202 for accepted. And we need to add those headers. Okay, cool. Code still compiles, off to a great start. Let's come back here. Let's run this. I'm going to say Brad, and we're just going to say sum 41. Okay, it looks like we have an issue here. Oh, I see. So we can't do a 202 because we're essentially doing a redirect here in the headers.set location. So let's do a 303 and see how this goes. Okay, cool. That works more like what we would expect. Weird little nitpick that I did not expect to run into, but that makes total sense. So we're doing a redirection. We need a redirect header because we're doing the redirection right here. We're saying headers.set location. And that's our redirect. Okay, cool. So this feels pretty good. We have a form here that we're working with. We want to go ahead and make our admin interface, though. You can see our admin interface is blank. So let's go ahead and solve that. So we're going to do a couple different things. The very first is we're going to introduce our first island. So I want to have a block, a card, if you will, of song, the person who's singing it, the song, and the artist, and then also some arrows to manipulate it in the queue, and then an X to remove it from the queue. So we're going to start with that song submission island. And again, remember, islands are the interactive client-side JavaScript that we have. So if we don't put it in an island, it is not going to be client-side. It's just going to be server-side. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and go into islands song submission. And this is a completely blank file. So we're going to go ahead and start by importing type submission, because we're going to be working with submissions. Submissions/submissions.ts. Excellent. Export default function, because we're making a component. So we have a function component here. We have a song submission. You are going to receive a submission, an index, and a total number of items. And the reason we want to do that is we want to only show arrows where it makes sense. So the very first item is not going to have an arrow to move it farther up the queue, because there's nowhere up for it to go. And the last item is not going to have an arrow to move it farther down the queue, because there's nowhere down for it. We've coded against that on our server too, but this is just a nice little quality of life thing that will make the UI look a little better. We can go ahead and give these some types. So submission is of type submission. Index is going to be the index of the submission item, so it's going to be a number. And then total items will also be a number. And these need to be... okay, so we have our function. Now what we can do is we're going to return something, and this is going to be JSX. So I'm just going to go ahead and start by giving us a div to work with. And then we know that since this is the interactive piece, we want our code to be able to make HTTP requests to our API route. We haven't defined our API route yet, but we know that it's going to allow us to move items up or down or remove them from the queue. Really straightforward. I'll also caveat this by saying I'm not going to worry about making this REST or REST-like or anything like that. So maybe don't take this as the best way to build an API. It's just going to meet my needs, and that'll be enough. I'm going to go ahead and define two functions. The first one's going to be called move. And we will have a direction that gets provided to us. So it'll either be up or down. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to fetch. So whenever you click this, we're just going to go ahead and send this to our backend, our API route that we have yet to create. So we're going to do a post. And we'll do body JSON.stringify. We'll go ahead and stringify the body here. This will be direction, and this will be index. Okay. And then once that succeeds, we'll do like global this. So if you want to access the window, you have to do global this in Deno, because the window is not global that you could just access freely. But we can do something like this to reload the page. Okay, add a semicolon because we're not a heathen. Let's do another. So yeah, const remove equals async. And one of the things that I ran into with kind of exploring this path forward was Fresh has dynamic routes, but I could not figure out a good way to get the dynamic piece of the route from an API-based route. That stuff gets like parsed out and passed to the function really nice and easily, but actually accessing it in the API would have to do manual parsing. And the whole reason I'm mentioning this is that, in theory, a better API would be something like API submissions ID, and then doing like a delete on that. We're not going to do that. I ran into some small issues We could do it. It'd just be more code and a little bit more tedious. This is just going to be a little quicker. And again, this is not the best solution ever. This is more of a, we're having a karaoke party in 2 weeks, and I need to get something together. So, okay, we have our async here. We can do a fetch. We will fetch API submissions. I'm just going to do another post. I guess there's really no reason we don't do a delete instead. Yeah, let's just do a post. Keep it simple. Maybe we come back and change that since that is technically incorrect. And then we do something like, if we're using the same interface that we've defined above, you know what? No, let's do a delete. Let's do a delete. It's the right thing to do here, and we don't have to worry about following the same interface from above. All we need to do is delete the index. And again, normally this index would be part of the route, but I ran into some weird issues trying to pursue that path, or at least researching that path to see if that would be an option. Okay, so with that in mind, we can also then do a global this.location.reload. Great. We've set up our functions. I have an error that we just now fixed. And then now that we have our functions that we're going to call, we can start working on our JSX or TSX in this case. So let's do exactly that. I'm going to add some classes because we like for things to look pretty. I like to pad the heck out of things. So we're going to add padding 4, margin 4, background rows 400 because I've been enjoying that color, text white, and then we'll make this flex. Why not? Keep in mind that this is an individual card, so we'll actually put those in a list in the admin interface. But if we come here and say div class is equal to flex 1, what we can do here is then say div submission dot name. We have another div. This will be submission dot song. Maybe do another div here. Div class flex initial flex column. So we'll stagger things. So we're over here. I've got this div will hold the arrows and then like a little X at the bottom. Flex call, and then if we do that, we probably want to justify between. And then let's see. How do we want to handle this? Maybe we do something like index not equal to 0. If that's true, then we want the up arrow. So we'll do the up arrow here. Else, like an empty div. And we'll kind of follow this pattern for all of them. So we'll do something here that would be index is not equal to total items minus 1. If that's true, then we'll do the down arrow. Else, we'll do, again, an empty div. The reason we're doing an empty div there is we still want an element to take up space because we're choosing to flex these and do justify between. Otherwise, it would like slide things all over the place depending on how many items are rendered in the DOM for that one. And then our last one will be that X arrow. So what I'm going to do is go to Font Awesome, and we're going to grab a couple icons. Maybe. Okay. Weird that my monitor just flickered in and out like that. Okay, icons. So let's grab an X. Start there. Here's an X. SVG. We're going to paste this right here. It's going to yell at us because the Font Awesome icons have a HTML comment in them, and JSX does not like HTML comments. Longer than I thought. Okay, So we go here and remove all of this. Awesome. License. You should probably find a way to keep this in your actual projects because it is license information, free license information, but still keep that in your SVG if you can. And then we also have some other errors here because these aren't valid. So that X should be fine. Let's go ahead and find an arrow. We want an arrow up. I'm going to grab the SVG. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come right here, paste it. We'll go. And then if we come here, I think we should be able to. Yeah, that was much quicker. Great. And then we need to fix this last one, which I guess we could just do an up arrow and then rotate it, but I'm just going to go ahead and grab the arrow down instead. So if we paste this here, we come in here, we grab this, go here, we DI brackets. Okay, cool. Yeesh. Great. So this feels pretty good. These SVGs are just going to be plain SVGs, so let's add some classes to them, make them a little nice and styling. We have cursor pointer, perhaps, to make them a pointer, so it's clear that they're clickable. With for H4, yeah, that seems good. Oh, and then we want to add our on-click, right? So we have our on-click, and we want to move up. And then down here, we want to do the same thing. So we have a class, cursor pointer, width for, height for. Pretty good about that. On click, and we want to move down. Feel good about that. Last one, let's add a class, cursor pointer. Oh no, not cursor. Cursor pointer width for, height for. And this is the bane of Tailwind, right? Writing the same class over and over and over again. But I guess, you can always pull those out to components or find a better way to do this. In fact, this icon component would be a really great component, but we will worry about that at some other point. And then we should just be able to call remove on this one. Okay, I feel pretty good about this. We should probably wire this up so it's actually visible and we can actually test it out. So let's go to our admin route, and we have quite a bit that we need to do here. So we're going to go ahead and start by importing handlers from fresh server.ts because we know we're going to have some handlers that we want to work with. And I think we'll only have one actually, which will be nice. So we can import song submission. Nice, it automatically filled that in for us. And then we want to import type submission. No, type submission. And submission queue from submissions submission. Okay, cool. We have some types that we've added. We know that we're going to have a handler, so we're going to export const handler. That's going to be of type handlers. Specifically, we're just going to have a get handler. And what we're going to do with this get handler is get the list of submissions and then return them. So this should be really straightforward. We do need to await context.render. And context.render is just going to render the component that is associated with this route. But we want to provide data to it. So in our case, we're going to create a handler. If you don't have data for it, you don't have to provide a custom handler. But in our case, we do. We have data that we want to add to it. So we're going to add submissions, and that's going to equal submission queue.submission. And we'll just take the list of submissions straight off the queue. And then I think we should be good with our handlers. So now what we can do is export default function admin interface, something like that maybe. We're going to get data. This is going to be, you know what, it'd be easier for me to just type out the types and explain it as we go. So data is essentially holding all of the data that we pass to our function or our context render. So in our case, it is an array of submissions. Okay, feel pretty good about that. Looks good. Now that we're in here, we can return, let's write some more TSX. Div class. We want to do something like px4 py8. I think this is what the index route had. You know what? Crazy idea. Let's go to the index route. Go here. What do we want from this? Sure. Yeah, we'll take it all. Yank that. Come back to admin. Paste. I might have an extra. Yep. Cool. No big deal. Now that we're here, we can remove the message stuff since we're not working with that. I'm going to change this to, say, admin interface, just in case. I don't, that way there's no confusion that this is the admin interface versus the submission interface. We don't need our form anymore, so we can remove all of that. With that, but we'll remove the whole form. And then all we want to do down here is map. So data submissions map. We will get the submission and the index, and then we will return song submission. Submission equals submission. Index equals index. No. How did that happen? Index. And then total items is equal to data.submissions.length. Close that out. Okay, that feels pretty good. I think that's going to be what we want. Either way, we should be able to go back to our admin interface and see something. Okay, cool. We did submit a item earlier, but I can't stress enough, and I did mention this earlier, that we're keeping everything in memory, and Deno will automatically reload our application when we make code changes. So unfortunately, one of the downsides to that is that as we're making code changes, we will have to enter a lot of data because we're constantly removing it. So let's say sum41. Now if we go to our admin interface, give this a shot, /admin, you can see that there's Brad, there's sum41. Let's maybe add a couple more items. So I'm going to say Jake, and he's going to sing something by Yellow Card. And then maybe Catherine is going to sing Dancing Queen by ABBA. Now if we go to our admin interface, and again, like this admin interface isn't locked down or anything, so anyone can access it. We're all friends here at my house. I'm sure they will just let me take care of it, but it's also nice to be able to give this to someone else if I need to step out for a minute. So in theory, we should be able to click these buttons and our page is reloading, but nothing else is happening. Why is that? Well, we don't have our routes. In fact, I think if we take a look at the network request that we're making, yeah, 405, method not allowed. And then if we do a post, method not allowed. How do we fix that? Oh, we have to implement our routes. Don't worry, we are almost done. So if we go to our routes API submissions file, all we need to do here is import submission queue. Okay. And then we want to import, again, handlers from fresh/server.ts. Now that we have that, we can export const handlers equals. We're going to create two, right? We have a post that we're taking in, request, and we have an async delete that we're taking in. Let's handle the post first. So in the case of the post, we want to get the body, and we know that the body is going to be a type with direction, and it's either going to be up or down. And it's going to have an index, and that index is going to be a number. And we can do await request.json. Oh, I have await dot. What's that? Come on. There we go. Now that we are awaiting request.json, we basically just want to await submission queue dot move submission index. Sorry, body dot index body dot direction. Okay, feel pretty good about that. We do need to return a response, so our client will know whether this passed, failed, or succeeded or failed. So let's just do status 200. Everything's good at this point. We do need to add our delete method. So we'll do the same here. It's going to be really similar. We have a const body, but this time all we have is the index, await request.json, await submission queue.remove submission, and then we want to pass in body.index. If that passes as we would expect it to, return new response, null, status 200. And then in theory, you would have, error handling here as well. Maybe you'd wrap this into a catch or something if it is possible that that code can fail, which it is. Even though we've defensively programmed against it, there's always the chance that more changes get made and those aren't as defensive and things could fail. So the point I'm getting at here is you might want to wrap this in like a try catch and return a different response depending on what happened. And then your client can adjust depending on what happens. Again, we have made changes to our code, so we have lost all of our data in memory. Let's just go add Brad, sum41, Catherine, Abba, Jake, yellow card. Now that we have those, we can go to our admin interface. In theory, I can move Brad around, move Brad all the way to the bottom. I can move Jake around. I can move Jake up to the top. And then maybe Jake is ready to sing, so I can go ahead and remove him from the queue. I can also remove Catherine from the queue, and now it's down to just me, and I have my X. I can hit that, and I'm good to go. Is it pretty? No. Is it going to work? Oh yeah, I think it's going to work. So now we have to get this on my Raspberry Pi. There's a couple different options for this. I am going to take the simplest approach. My Raspberry Pi has Wi-Fi. It's connected to the network. It has to be, or else the server wouldn't be accessible. So what I'm going to do is we are going to... we don't have a Docker file, do we? We don't have a Docker file. So congratulations, we are creating a Docker file. So we can, from denoland / deno alpine 1.44 Docker, let's see what we're working with. Updated 1 day ago. 2.0.2, heck yeah. 2.0.2. Let me make sure. We have an Alpine. Alpine 2.0.2. Heck yeah, that's the one we want. Perfect. Workdir app. Oh. Workdir app. Did do that. Copy. Run deno cache main.ts. We'll go ahead and cache our main file. Stop. run deno task build, user deno, expose. We're running on 8,000, so we will expose port 8,000. And then we need to give this a command. Normally these would all be capital, but I have done them all lowercase, so we're just going to keep command lowercase as well. Main.ts. Okay, I think that's going to work. So docker build tag karaoke app. Let this run for a minute, and I'm going to enjoy a sip of coffee while it's running. Ryan Dahl, if you happen to watch this video, I've really been enjoying deno. Just wanted to let you know. Okay, great. We have our Docker image. Docker.run p80. I don't know. We can do 8,000. 8,000 karaoke app. Okay, cool. We're still running it on 8,000, so that probably didn't find to the port like we would expect it to. So, sweet. It is running. Okay, so we actually do, since we're going to publish this, I need to publish it under my namespace. So I've got a Brad Seifert Karaoke app namespace. So if we publish this, or tag this, and then we can docker push Brad Seifert / karaoke app. Let this push. Give this just a second. Okay, cool. In theory, that should show up here. Latest a few seconds ago, operating system Linux ARM64. Sounds pretty good to me. Just to prove that this is working, okay, localhost 8,000 is good to go. Now I'm going to SSH into pi1.local. This is the hostname for my Pi. Long password. Now that we're here, I do already have Docker installed on this Raspberry Pi. This is kind of a weird pain. There is a shell script that you can, maybe history? Yeah, okay, cool. So there is a shell script that you can run somewhere. I don't know where it's at. There is a shell script that you can run that helps automate the installation of Docker on your Raspberry Pi. It's from Docker. It's a trusted source. You know, check your checksums before you actually execute it and all that. But that was probably the easiest way to get Docker installed and running on the Pi. But now that we have Docker running, what we can do, this repo that I just published that image to is completely public. So now I can run docker run p. We want to grab port 80 since that's the default port for internet traffic here. And then we're going to get port 80, bind it to 8,000, run Brad Seifert / karaoke app. Latest. Snapshot. Okay, cool. That was way quicker than I expected. So it's not going to work on localhost because it's going to work on pi.local / pi.local should be good. Great. So now we're accessing it on our Pi. I can also pull this up on my phone since my phone's on the network and just prove that this works like we would expect. pi1.local. I will quickly kick the camera over so you can see that. Let's karaoke, pi1 local. So we're good to go. I think we have this running on Docker. I think the main thing is you'll probably want to run this in a detached state, or I'm going to run this in a detached state, so I don't have to keep the shell session open and connected to my Pi while this stuff is going on. But yeah, we have a working karaoke app that we've built in deno and fresh in just a little over an hour, I guess, which I'm pretty happy with. So if you follow along, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on fresh and deno. Again, fresh is maybe not my favorite framework, but it is nice. But I've really, really been enjoying deno quite a bit. So I've always been a fan of TypeScript, and I've just felt that the ecosystem, unfortunately, for the JavaScript runtimes has been kind of abysmal. Node really fell short, and I didn't realize it until I started writing Go and Rust, and started to see that languages weren't just languages anymore. They were platforms, and they had a toolchain that came with them, and the toolchain was fantastic. And I think Deno is really pushing TypeScript into that modern space, and I'm really excited for that. So yeah, are you building stuff with Deno? Maybe Fresh, maybe just Node, and you're curious about Deno? Take a moment, let me know in the comments below. Have a great day.